Okay, so like the other day, right? If you know anything about me, you know that I actually hate religion. I do believe in Jesus, but the reason I do believe in Jesus is because he sought me out supernaturally, and because I have an understanding of the spiritual realm is why I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And why I do believe in keeping his commandments and having a relationship with him, an intimate relationship with him. But with that being said, I genuinely, I do believe because I'm able to receive messages. I do believe that some messages are from God, but at the same time, when you have that gift of discernment, it's like somebody once said it, and it was a prophet. They said it very well. You have to fight for God's voice. So you might get connections from different spirits. So you have to make sure that it's from God, right? But anyway, so the messages that I've received have been about witchcraft within the church, okay? And it's happened on multiple occasions. But there was one time that I was really thinking about something, and the word voodoo immediately came up. So I was like, this, I believe this is from the Lord, because I battle with depression and with major depression and PTSD and other stuff as well, right? So I went to this church, and this is a very common claim that Christians make that's not biblical. It's when they say, Jesus didn't deserve to die on the cross. I did, or you did, or we did. And the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible does not say that human beings, that you and I deserve to die on the cross. Not to mention, I think where this is coming from, and if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, go ahead and write it in the comments. But a lot of these pastors and religious leaders are so fake. A lot of them do it. They honestly just do it for themselves. They do it for the attention. They do it for the authority. They're still humans. They're still weird, and a lot of them come from very awful backgrounds. Like this is a big thing. I've heard a lot of people complain about. Like, okay, Christians just turned Christians because they did something awful. Some of that is actually true. I don't think that's true for me. I have done things that I'm not proud of, like I had a time in my life where I was very promiscuous. I was essentially, I came from a very awful background, a very sexually abusive background in my childhood, which caused me to believe that sex was inevitable and therefore I had to participate in it, just know how to do it right, which is what brought me into like hookup culture. And I had an open marriage, and it was not good. But at the end of the day, I don't think that that means that I genuinely deserved. I believe that I was a product of my environment. Since I was born into sin, I didn't ask to be born into sin. I just was, right? So, I definitely don't think that that classifies me as a person that needs to be crucified. Maybe my flesh needs to be spiritually crucified, and, crucified as in I don't need to give in to my flesh, but don't believe that I need to be punished on the cross for it, right? With Jesus being the intercessor, the intermediary that's, between us and God, he made that possible when he died on the cross because he paid for those sins. That doesn't mean that you deserve to be. And I think when people say that, it can be very hurtful. If a person is dealing with anxiety, depression, feelings of worthlessness, and somebody comes and tells you like, oh, well, you also deserve to die on the cross. It wasn't Jesus. Jesus did not deserve to die on the cross, but he was actually the only one that could die on the cross. Because if you look at like the Old Testament before Jesus died, there was a constant need to make like sacrifices, right? Sacrifices of like animals, right? That were clean, and that would essentially pay the price to be able to come close to God, right? God only chose a few to be able to go close to him, right? Because he's just so holy. Okay, and those are like spiritual laws. Those aren't like human laws, right? Because you could go up to like a pastor, you could go up to like anybody and talk to them. You don't have to like be holy and clean, but in those, when you were trying to talk to God, you did, right? So that's why we have Jesus now. So even if you did deserve to die, like if you did something beforehand, like you were, I don't freaking know, like a human trafficker, which is probably the worst type of humans. Um, if you were like, a horrible person and you did deserve to die, you still wouldn't help all of humanity get close to God with your death, right? So, or even if you were a saint, you know, you still couldn't go up you couldn't die for everybody, right? So like Jesus was born out of a virgin. He was born out of immaculate conception, born fully of the Spirit, right? So he was fully human, he fully man. So you have to understand the spirit realm to understand why it was so important for him to die on the cross for us, because he was perfect and he was also fully man and fully God. Okay, we're not fully man and fully God. So even if you're a good Christian, you've been a good Christian your whole life, you're not you don't live in sin. One thing is if you sin, another thing is if you live in sin, right? So like if you were like a saint person, saints are real, they do exist. I've met a few. God has highlighted certain saints to me, and they're usually people who have been living out of sin, who have been married, and are not participating in other activities that are considered sinful. There is a lot of saints actually, that God has sanctified. There's a lot of people that God has sanctified, but even then they're not like fully God and fully man, and they could never do that. But I don't know. I would just start to think about it because I was like, you know what? I don't want anybody to be fooled and to feel like they can't get close to God because there's just ridiculous thing of like, oh, Jesus didn't deserve to die. I did. No, you did not deserve to die on the cross. Nobody deserved to die on the cross. Unless, you're an awful person, but even then God still was merciful on you. He was still graceful to you. You could still be forgiven no matter what.